a fan, bro. Bust slow, the honeys, I'm in the Lambo. Yeah, baby.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all right, sorry. Okay, defendants are present, defense counsel's present, state's present. Let's go ahead and bring in our jury.
Yes, Judge. All right. All jurors are judged.
Okay, very good. Welcome back, members of the jury. Everyone have a seat, and please call your next witness. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Very good, you may proceed.
Tracy Lynn Hartig. First name Tracy, middle name Lyn, last name Hartig.
Hey, Doctor, can you go through your current job, your education, and your training?
Certainly. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Florida. I graduated from Clemson University with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I then went to graduate school at Nova Southeastern University, where I obtained a master's in psychology and then a doctorate in psychology. As part of the licensing process for Florida, first to graduate, I did an internship at a site that was approved by the American Psychological Association. That was in Wichita, Kansas. Then I returned to Florida, graduated, and then completed a year of supervised clinical experience to sit for licensing in the state of Florida. To get the license, in addition to doing that year of supervised experience, you also have to take and pass a licensing exam. I've been licensed in the state of Florida as a psychologist since 1999. I have focused my practice on forensic issues, which is working with the court system to answer various psychological legal questions. So I've been doing that since 1999. I started working down in the Fort Lauderdale area In June of 2000, I relocated to Polk County, where my practice has been primarily based since that time. I do sometimes do work in other counties, Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas, and other counties around the state, but my primary practice has been in the 10th Judicial Circuit. So I'm a private psychologist. I get hired independently to do evaluations, but I've also worked in addition to with the courts, with the Office of Disability Determinations, Department of Children and Families, Child Protection Team, and some personal injury work. To maintain my license, I have to complete 40 hours of continuing education credits every 2 years. So I've been doing that since I was licensed.
The courts previously qualified you as an expert in forensic psychology?
Yes.
You know how many times?
I've testified over around 250 times, so at least that number.
And that's all in Florida?
Yes.
In this case, what were you asked to do?
I was asked to evaluate Mr. Isaiah Chance for mitigation. I was asked to assess for psychological factors, cognitive factors, and ultimately to develop any psychological mitigation for this death penalty case.
What did that evaluation involve?
I reviewed records, the offense documents. I evaluated him. I met with him for 2 hours over 2 dates. The evaluation was conducted in person at the Hillsborough County Jail. In addition to interviewing him and getting a comprehensive background information, mental status examination, I administered standardized psychological testing to assess for academic and intellectual factors. I also spoke with his mother for about an hour by telephone, and I had the opportunity to review his Duval County school records, which were extensive as he was evaluated multiple times over his career or educational career.
And what was your initial impression of Mr. Chance when you first met him?
He was friendly, pleasant, engaged. He presented good hygiene, good grooming. There was no indication or overt signs of depression, anxiety. He, again, was pleasant. He was not hostile, irritable, aggressive. Again, ultimately friendly, cooperative, engaged, willing to participate.
Anything stand out to you during your sessions about how he presented himself?
Yes. So throughout both sessions, he presented as invested in presenting to me and having me see him as capable and smart. And this was a theme that stood out to me. It's a little different than I see typically, in that he wanted me to see that he was smart. He would say that he may not have done well in school, but he was really smart. He worked on things. He at times would ask me if I knew what something meant, or a word, or what something meant. And not because it was almost as if he was trying to show me that he too knows things, and he understands what's going on, and he knows how things work. So overall, just trying to present as a smart and capable individual.
How did he present emotionally?
He presented, again, with this a bright affect. He presented with, as someone who was, again, a bit naive, but yet upbeat and happy, again, pleasant. He presented as someone who was not suffering from any serious depression, as someone who was connected with others. He talked about his family, described his mother as his heart, his everything, his love. He became tearful at one point when talking about his mother and wanting contact with her. He talked about his bond with closeness with his siblings. So he presented as someone who did not present with any major mental health as far as like depression or anxiety, psychosis types of concerns, and as an individual who was connected with others.
Let's talk about the testing. I think you did the academic achievement testing.
Yes.
And what did that testing show?
So the academic achievement testing is testing to see how someone is performing typical academic skills, such as math, spelling, reading. So the assessment that I gave him assessed over 4 categories. And those are categories: reading, which is his sight reading, his math skills, his spelling, and his reading comprehension. So the reading comprehension is, so reading is his ability to just pronounce or say words. Sentence comprehension is his ability to read a sentence and comprehend what he's reading. So those results indicated that his reading, his ability to sight read, was at a 5th grade level. His math skills were at a 3rd grade level. His spelling skills were at a 8th grade level, and his sentence comprehension skills were at a 7th grade level. The 7th grade level being an ending 7th grade level. Overall, all of his scores from his worst subject area, which would be math, which is at a 3rd grade level, to his best subject level, which would have been the sentence comprehension, or I'm sorry, the spelling, was around an 8th grade level. What's interesting about that academic testing is that it's all below it's not high school level academic functioning.
How does that translate? Can you say how that translates into the real world for some of those specific skills?
Yes. So when we're talking about math skills and we're talking about a 3rd grade level, think of it as an 8-year-old doing math. When we're talking about spelling at an 8th grade level, you're thinking around, ending middle school. I think that's like 12, 13 years of age. So we're talking about somebody who's functioning at a lower level than you might expect for someone who's 18, 19, or 20, certainly lower than high school. And this has implications for ability to understand contracts, legal documents, directions and instructions, sometimes if they're complex or multi-step. So it has implications with regards to daily functioning, especially things that require more organization, more attention, more knowledge, and more ability.
Thank you. And you administered an IQ test, is it the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale?
Yes. So the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale is actually now in its 5th version. It's been around for a very long time. I administered the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale 4th edition to him, as that was the one out at the time that I saw him. That's an assessment that is designed to assess what someone's IQ is, and it goes over several areas. So we're looking at someone's ability to do multiple different things. The test is broken down into 4 different parts. So there's a verbal comprehension part, a working memory index part, perceptual reasoning, and processing speed. And all 4 of those, and then there's individual subtests, several within each of those parts. And all of that gets added up together to come to what we call a full scale IQ, or someone's overall intellectual ability. And you can see strengths and weaknesses in some of that. Some people are strong all across all of those areas, some poor across all of those areas, and some are mixed. So for Mr. Chance, he got a full scale IQ score of 71. And what that tells us is that his intellectual functioning is in what we call the borderline range. There's the average range, which is 90 to 109. And of course, high, average, superior are above that 109. But for purposes here, average is 90 to 109. Low average is 80 to 89. Borderline is 70 to 79. And anything 69 and below is what we associate with someone who has an intellectual disability. So his score of 71 is in the borderline range, but is at the low end of that range and close to an individual who would have an intellectual disability.
Can you explain how that broke down along the areas of cognitive functioning?
Yes. So again, as I talked about, there are 4 different areas. So there's the verbal comprehension category, which is assessing language skills, word knowledge, and is verbally based. The subtests are based on, for example, vocabulary information, similarities between items where you're talking through what the similarities are. And on that particular area, he got a scaled score of 81, which places him actually in the low average range. It is the end of the low average range, but it is in the low average range. And this was one of his areas of strength. The other area of strength was his processing speed, which was also a score of 81, which again is low average, processing speed is his ability to intake information and quickly come up with the answer or the response. These are those subtests for that are timed tests. They're tests where the person is performing an activity that's hands-on task under a timed situation. Again, he got an 81. So on those 2 of the 4 parts, he was in the score of 81, which is in the low average range, which were strengths for him. Next, we look at working memory index. He got a 71, which places him at the low end of the borderline range. And that 71 with the working memory index is his ability to attend to information, organize it in memory, and then produce a response. So for example, math skills are part of one of the subtests for this. Last, we have the perceptual reasoning, which he got a 69. 69 is in that intellectually deficient range. And the perceptual reasoning is his ability to reason out things, make inferences, come up with, it's kind of organizing parts into a whole. So it's kind of, in a sense, like a problem solving, it's fluid, abstract thinking. So it's got those 4 components. And as I said, he had the 81 on 2 of the parts, a 71 on the working memory index, a 69 on the processing speed, and then, on the perceptual reasoning. And that all comes together for the full scale IQ score, which is the 71.
And there's a spread in between some of those. Obviously, what do you make of that?
Yes, so there is a 12-point spread between the 69 score and the 81 scores. That spread is what we see that's more associated with an individual who maybe has like a learning disability. So as I said before, people can have strengths and weaknesses on these different subtests, and some do well in certain areas and not well in other areas. So this 12-point spread suggested to me that he is an individual who has some relative strengths and relative weaknesses. And that again, there's a pattern to how he can function, and that he'll have areas of functioning in day-to-day life where he is better at others.
How did these IQ results match up with his academic records?
The IQ test results and the academic test results were consistent, which is what we look for when we're looking at, for example, validity and reliability of assessments. He performed well on the verbal subtest on the academic testing. He performed well on the verbal subtest on the IQ test. On the assessments, for example, in the working memory index with a math component, he did poorly, which is also what he did poorly on with the academic testing, with math being his lowest skill area.
How did he do during this testing, when you get to the end of a time section and he ran out of time?
So Mr. Chance was, as I said earlier, invested in presenting as smart and capable. And that is his same approach to the testing. So for the time tests where you have a time that you tell them to stop working, he wanted to keep going. Or if it was simply a question where he wasn't timed and had produced an answer, but it was time to move on, he wanted more time. He was invested in trying to come up with an answer.
Let's talk about the Duval County Public School records. What is in the big picture, what do those show?
The big picture shows that he is an individual who has struggled academically since he started school. He had multiple evaluations. He was first evaluated at the age of 4. There was some concern with speech difficulties at that time. He was tested with a preschool measure that showed an IQ score of 81. Caution has to be given when you're testing children that young, because there's a lot of factors that can affect performance, and or sometimes the scores can appear higher than they actually are, because as the child gets older and more learning of school and academic takes place, then they sometimes start to fall behind. He was tested again just before he turned age 10, and he was tested again at age 12. Those times he was tested due to academic concerns and concerns with maintaining his attention and focus in the classroom. He was administered academic and IQ testing in both of those later evaluations. His testing when he was just about age 10 showed that he resulted in a full-scale IQ score of 70, which is just at that borderline range. He was tested again when he was about 12, and those results were a 63, which is well in the intellectually deficient range. Academic testing was consistent with his IQ test results at the time. So overall, what we're seeing is a historical documentation of his functioning, and his functioning being pretty consistent over all of that time.
And at the age 12, was there an issue with him in different classes or potentially moving him to different classes?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Was there, at age 12, did the evaluation talk about moving him to specific classes and he was pulled out of the school?
I believe there was some issues with, when he was tested in age 12, he was at that point repeating the fourth grade. I don't remember specifically if he was pulled out of school at that point, but there were some changes in his school. At times he was going to school in public schools. Sometimes he was attending more private Christian schools. I believe it was a few years later because there was an indication that school wanted him to be evaluated again several years later after that evaluation when he was 12 in 2015. And it appeared at that time his mother had pulled him out of the school to go to a different, to do homeschool at that point in time.
What is the significance of the pattern that you believe you saw with the 3 evaluations and tests in school, along with your evaluation here?
So the significance of the pattern is a couple things. First, the significance is that it shows that he's consistent with the testing, that he is who he is, he functions how he functions. Those test results are also important to, for example, me when I'm conducting evaluations like this, because it gives me a historical picture of the individual. It gives me a documentation of how the individual was performing at another point in time. His test results, so it helps me to determine the validity and the reliability of the test results that I have. So not only does it establish a historical pattern for an individual, but it also gives me a basis for which to compare my test results to determine if those results are indeed an accurate reflection of how someone is functioning.
Did you also see notes about classroom observations or behavioral assessments?
Yes, and that's another important piece to the school records, is that when they are conducting their evaluations, they, in the evaluations, comment if they think the results are valid or not. They talk about how the child approached the testing with descriptions of the child, in which case he was described as somebody who was pleasant and working to the best of his abilities. But also the observations, because in one of them, attention difficulties were a significant concern. So that evaluator was also observing him in the classroom to address those issues. And they were noting that they do 10-second timed intervals, and every 10 seconds he was engaging in an off-task behavior. It was also noted that like 63% of the time he would be on task, but when compared to his peers, male peers in his classroom, they were on task like 95% of the time. So the examiner, the school psychologist's observation of him was that he was off task compared, not only just off task, but compared off task to other students in the classroom in the same environment that he was in. It also described behaviors such as him kind of playing around at times, hitting himself in the face with a shoestring at one point. So what we were also getting is a good picture of problems with that attention and that focus that he was exhibiting back at that point in time as well.
Speaking of that, based on your evaluation, did you reach a diagnosis of ADHD for Mr. Chance?
I did.
What was that based on?
That was based on multiple sources. First, the school records, which indicate a history of attention problems. And again, they go through and they describe some of the behaviors that he was engaging in that were observed. And these are classic textbook symptoms of ADHD. And not only was the observer seeing those symptoms, but there were teacher reports of those symptoms. Also, his mother and at least one of the teachers completed behavior rating forms, which help the examiner get a better picture of where behavior problems lie. And particularly with the teacher report, there were significant problems with attention and concentration noted. So the ADHD diagnosis comes from documentation of the symptoms that are required for the diagnosis when he's in school at a young age. He continues to have those problems as we see on my testing, for example, with like the working memory and some of those things that he had trouble focusing, maybe in pulling all the attention together, and the processing speed. I see also some of those symptoms when I'm talking to him, in the sense of at times he's somewhat verbally impulsive. He's fidgety during the interview. So we have multiple sources, again, of this ADHD symptomatology showing itself over his lifespan.
Was that ADHD ever formally treated?
It was not.
How does that interact with borderline intellectual functioning?
So you have someone who has a borderline capability, who is already, doesn't have the ability, they're already functioning at a lower level, a lower way of comprehending things, a lower way of understanding things. Then you add in ADHD symptoms, particularly of inattention and impulsivity, and you have difficulty then really even thinking through what is going on. So one of the things in the testing was that even though he was lower functioning, if he was given more time, he could at times do better. But when you have someone who has ADHD, it's hard for them to then put in that time because the ADHD symptoms are taking over. So it's almost as if there's like this internal, break to say slow down. He doesn't have that. So you have two factors or two issues going on that affect his reasoning, comprehension, decision-making.
Based on your evaluation, testing, school records, how would you describe his social functioning in relationship to other people?
Judge, I'd object to relevance unless we have a time. I don't think counsel asked about diagnosis as time. Like what part of his life, when.
I would ask, okay, let me rephrase. Based on everything you evaluated, school testing, how would you describe his social functioning in relationship to other people around the time that you talked to him, evaluated him?
Overall, I would say that he is naive in a social sense. I think it is his intellectual ability, or lower intellectual ability, his ADHD, that created issues since he was young. He wants to fit in, and going again back to him wanting to be seen as smart and capable throughout my interviews with him. I think that's been present amongst peers and others for a long time. School records note there was a meeting in March of 2025 where his mother indicates that he wants to fit in, doesn't like being seen as different and being pulled out of class, doesn't want to take help doesn't want to admit that he needs help. So I see him as an individual who has been struggling throughout his life to cover for areas where he is not the same as everybody else, where he is not doing as well as everybody else, by working harder and trying harder to fit in.
Is he someone that is seeking approval and is eager to please?
I think he is absolutely seeking approval and trying to fit in. and certainly trying to please in the sense that he wants others to see him as smart and capable, and so maybe more willing. Again, when I say that naive, he doesn't necessarily, he sees what's right in front of him. So he maybe sees step one, but doesn't see step 2 or 3. He's taking things at face value and not really questioning, well, is there an ulterior motive here? Is there something else here? Is this really, this position seems this way, but is it really going to lead somewhere else?
Is that what you mean by naive? Because you mentioned that earlier as well.
Right, naive in the sense that he does not necessarily have that insight or that ability to see steps ahead.
Having conducted the full evaluation, the number of hours with Isaiah, his mother, and the testings, what are your diagnoses?
I diagnosed him with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as well as a borderline intellectual functioning.
The school system found him functioning in that similar range, around 12. Does that history inform your opinion?
Yes.
Is there anything in your testing to indicate he exaggerated his difficulties or performed poorly on purpose?
No, the opposite. I mean, my testing was actually somewhat better in some well, it was significantly better than his testing when he was 12. So if he was trying to present as low functioning, I would not expect him to actually perform better now than when he was in school.
Bringing everything together, the borderline intellectual functioning, the untreated ADHD, and the academic functioning at elementary school levels, how would you characterize his overall functioning as a person in the world based on everything?
I think he is a person who, again, is trying hard to get by, is trying to achieve, has goals and is trying to achieve those goals. But because of his intellectual limitations, his ADHD, he has to work very hard to achieve those things. I think he's working very hard to be liked by others, to fit in. And it's this bit of being naive that I think also makes him vulnerable, in the sense that he is invested in trying again to gain respect from people. And so he is, I think that puts him at a disadvantage in the sense that he is more likely to be taken advantage of than to be the person that takes advantage of others. He presents to me as someone who's much more of a follower than a leader.
Thank you, Doctor. Tend to the witness.
Okay, Cross?
How long was your interview with him, Doctor?
I interviewed him about an hour and a half of just talking with him, and then the testing with him was another, I believe, hour, or maybe 2 hours of interview with him, because I was with him a total of 4 hours. And of course, part of that time was the administration of the psychological assessments.
So out of the 4 hours, you actually spoke with him for an hour and a half?
Well, I actually spoke with him the whole time because the tests are verbally administered. So
Okay.
I'm collecting background information for at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of that time. And then the other part, even though it's testing, so it's specific questions that I'm asking, I'm still observing his behavior and still interacting with him.
Okay, but the testing requires a lot of attention, does it not, on his part?
Well, yes, he has to focus and pay attention to the
Right.
testing.
And a lot of it's timed, correct?
About half of them are timed.
Right. So he doesn't really have a lot of time for chit chat. You're giving him instructions and then he has to perform, correct?
Correct.
All right. So really, your chance to have a conversation with him to get a feel about him was for an hour and a half, correct?
Yes.
And in that hour and a half, you are giving an opinion of this man as being naive, correct?
Yes.
And vulnerable to being manipulated. Is that what you're saying? Being a follower instead of a leader?
Yes, it is.
And you're coming up with all of that after an hour and a half of interviewing him.
Well, it's more than just an hour and a half of interviewing. All of that isn't determined just on my interview with him. It's determined on his test results, his school
Which
event,
test results? Your test results?
my test results,
Which
and
is intelligence testing and academic achievement, correct?
correct.
Did you test him for naivete?
No,
Okay. Did you test him for vulnerability?
no,
Or did you give him a specific test that designates whether he's a leader or a follower?
no.
Okay. And so you have your test results when you had him perform the test, correct?
Yes,
All right. And then you're looking at testing he did when he was 4 years old, when he took the whisk, correct?
yeah, well, it wasn't exactly the whisk, but yes, it was a Wechsler test that he took when he was 4.
Okay. It was a Wechsler test though, right?
Yes,
Just like the waist that you gave him, similar, not just like, but similar, one designed for toddlers or children.
correct.
Okay. And what is the name of that test? Because you didn't tell us that earlier.
I would have to look at the name of that test. I don't administer a test to kids that young. It was the Wechsler Preschool and Primary Scale of Intelligence, 3rd edition.
And then when he was, I believe, 9, almost 10 years old, 9 years and 11 months, that sound about right?
Yes,
He's tested again, and this time it's the whisk, correct?
that is correct.
All right. And that's again a Wechsler intelligence scale for children.
Yes,
Okay. And then you're giving him the Wechsler adult intelligence scale, the WACE.
correct.
And I'm saying WISC and WACE, these are acronyms for that test, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So you had his 4-year-old, 10-year-old, and 12-year-old intelligence tests, correct?
Yes,
And I think they may have done the Woodcock-Johnson, which is an academic test of
yes.
some type. Now, the Woodcock-Johnson, that's not a test that you would utilize in the forensic setting, correct?
I mean, some people do utilize it in the forensic setting. I use another academic achievement test system, so I don't use the Woodcock-Johnson.
So you had that testing, and then you had the notes of his teachers in the school setting, correct?
Yes,
That you've indicated. Both observation notes, notes where they've documented what the parents are telling them, correct?
yes,
All right. But that's between the age of 4 and 12, correct?
correct.
All right. And I think you may have referenced something. You said at a parent meeting in 2025. I'm assuming you misspoke.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did. It was 2020.
2020. Okay. So again, that's 6 years ago, correct?
Yes,
4 years before the offense date in this case, correct?
correct.
All right. And so when you're talking about his naivete and whether he's a follower or a leader, you're looking primarily at notes about this man when he was a little boy, right? In a
Yes.
school setting, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Now, you did an interview with him for an hour and a half, right?
Yes,
And you said he was very invested.
yes,
And you felt like he was trying to prove to you that he was smart too, correct?
correct.
Did you take into account that he may have actually be intelligent enough to give input?
It's not that I didn't think he wasn't intelligent enough to give input, but he wanted to present as someone who I think is much higher functioning than he is.
And that's your assumption from his behavior, correct? When you say he wanted to.
Well, I'd say it's my opinion based on my years of psychological evaluations and working with individuals and seeing his school test results and his current test results.
So you've given an opinion, borderline intellectual functioning. I want to ask you about that. And you gave an opinion about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yes,
I believe that you refer to that as ADHD. That's a common acronym for that, right?
yes,
Would it be fair to say your intelligence testing and the academic testing you gave, coupled with the testing that he had in elementary school into middle school, is the primary basis for your opinion that he is borderline intellectual functioning?
yes,
Okay. The diagnosis you gave for ADHD, are you following a diagnostic criteria of some type for that?
yes,
And is that contained within some type of statistical manual that you and other forensic psychologists, psychiatrists rely upon?
yes,
And is that the diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders?
it is.
And you were using the 5th edition TR, correct?
Actually, I was using, yes, that's the most recent, yes.
Okay, that's the
Right.
most recent.
Yes.
All right. I'm holding the 5th edition, right? You can
Yes,
see
and
it from
then,
there?
right, I'm sorry, I saw the purple and I was like, wait a minute, because the new one
Is the new one a
blue.
different color?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
I haven't seen it, so I didn't know. So there are diagnostic criteria that you follow for ADHD, correct?
Yes,
Is there a substantial difference between the fifth and the TR? I want to be fair in this area of ADHD.
There is not.
Okay. So there is a section in the DSM-5, I'm just going to refer to it as the DSM-5, and that is commonly the way it's referred to, or the DSM-5-TR, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I'm going to refer to the DSM-5 at page 63. There is a functional consequences of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder section. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And this is where it's being related that ADHD is associated with certain things at school level, like school performance, academic achievement. But in adults, it's associated with poor occupational performance is one thing, correct?
Yes.
Attainment, that's one too. You would agree with that?
Yes.
Attendance, poor attendance, and higher probability of unemployment, correct?
Yes.
Did you obtain an employment history from Mr. Chance?
I did.
Okay. And were you aware that he worked as a longshoreman?
Yes.
Okay. And he held other employment too, correct?
Yes.
And in order to work as a longshoreman, he had to obtain a transportation worker identification credential. Did he talk to you about that at all?
No.
All right. And that requires a process of application with the Department of Homeland Security through the TSA website, and then following up paperwork and interviews. Were you aware that he went through that to obtain that credential, to be able to access the areas of ports in Jacksonville to work as a longshoreman?
No.
Council didn't ask you about this, but you are being reimbursed or paid for your services in this case?
Yes.
What are you charging, or what is your fee schedule, doctor?
I charge $200 an hour.
Okay. And is that across the board? $200 for an hour for review, for writing, for any kind of work you do?
Yes, it is.
And is the $200 an hour, excuse me, does that include testifying?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Do you know how much you've accumulated and the amount of work you've done in this case?
To date, I have billed close to 4,000 based on the work that I've done for the case and then the depositions that I did for the state attorney's office.
Okay. So when we took your deposition, you were being paid for that too, correct?
Yes.
So you've billed 4,000. Now you've submitted invoices already?
Yes.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Okay, redirect. Okay, may this witness be excused? Okay, thank you. You're free to go. All right, who's going to be your next witness? Okay.
Your Honor, our next witness would like the video turned off for her testimony.
Okay, very good. I'd ask the media not broadcast the next witness, the face of the next witness. And counsel, can you introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi, my name is Walter Otto, Assistant Regional Counsel. I'm with Mr. Chance's defense team.
Very good. Do you solemnly swear or affirm
testimony you're about to give in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Very good. You may proceed.
Please state your name and spell it for the court reporter.
My name is Michelle Smith, Meshall, Smith.
And where do you live, ma'am?
I live in Jacksonville, Florida.
How long have you been there?
58 years.
And what do you do for a living?
Me and my husband has a trucking business, and I have a tax office.
You prepare tax returns?
Yes.
How do you know Isaiah Chance?
I know Isaiah. I knew Isaiah in the womb before he even became out of the womb. I knew his mom when she was pregnant with him.
What's your relation to him?
My relationship with his mom,
What's your relationship to him?
to him, I'm his godmother.
Okay. How do you know his mother?
Her and my daughter was best friends, and she became part of the family.
So you've known Mr. Chance his entire life.
Yes, I have.
Did you babysit him when he was young?
Yes, I watched him. I went over to his house also, and he came to my house.
Did you attend family events, celebrations, birthdays, that sort of thing?
Yes, I did.
How would you describe Isaiah as a young child?
He was quiet. He pretty much stayed to himself. He was loving.
Did you ever notice any behavioral problems with him while he was growing up?
No,
How was he with his brothers and sisters?
he was the only boy for a while, and he was protected of his sisters and his mother, but they all had a good relationship.
As he was growing up, I think at some point we discussed him getting involved in sports.
Yes, he played football for a brief moment.
Did you go to his games?
Yes.
What happened with that? Did he keep up with that?
I don't think that was something that he was interested in, so no, he didn't continue to play football.
What was your relationship with Isaiah like?
Well, my relationship with him I was more or less like a confidant. Like, he would call me and we would talk about anything, in and everything.
He would come to you with his problems?
Yes,
Would he tell you the truth?
yes,
In all those years of confiding in you, have you ever known him to lie to you?
no, he never lied to me. That's one thing that I can, admit about him, that he would tell me the truth.
If he was wrong about something, would he tell you that?
Yes, he would.
Now, you were close to him when he was younger. Did you stay close to him through high school?
Yes, I stayed close to him throughout his life, throughout his whole life.
Did you ever discuss his interests and goals as he got older?
Yes, we talked about a lot of things. One of the things I know that he wanted to go to school to be a merchant seaman.
And did he achieve that?
No, he didn't, but he did work. He wanted to work, so he did work.
What kind of jobs did he do?
I know that he was doing some door dashing, he was doing Ubering, and I want to say that he worked at a warehouse.
Did he also have an interest in music?
Yes,
And what was your experience with that?
well, he was an inspiring rapper, and he would send he sent me a request over on Instagram, and wanted me to look at one of his videos. So he kept me involved, with his music.
Did you actually help him make one of his videos?
Yes, he needed some money. He needed some money for, I guess, to finish up his video shoot. And he asked me would I send it to him, and I did.
You supported him in that.
You said what, sir?
You supported him in that.
Yes, I was. I was very supportive of him.
We also talked about his love of animals earlier. Tell
Yep.
us about that.
Me and my husband, Pitt had some puppies, and Isaiah and his mom came over one day, and it's this one puppy. I think he was the runt. I want to say he was the runt of the puppies, but he kept following Isaiah around, and every time Isaiah came over, that puppy would follow him around. But me and my husband, we had decided on that we was gonna give him that puppy because he took to that puppy, and that puppy took to him.
Did Isaiah have any issues when he was born?
He was a preemie. He came early. Yes.
And you were around during that time?
Yes.
As he grew up, watching him as you did you ever see any signs of abuse or trauma?
None.
What about his relationship with his mom? How was that?
The relationship that they have, every child should want to have that with their mother. They are very close.
In all the years that you were his confidant, somebody you talked to, did he ever mention anything about gang activity?
No, he never mentioned anything to me about nothing dealing with the gang.
Did he ever talk to you about friends who had been shot or killed?
No, he didn't.
Did you ever see him with a gun?
No, I never saw him with a gun.
When you would talk to him, check in on him, where would he be?
Most of the time, he would be at home at his mom's house.
Have you been following this case as it's progressed?
On and off.
When you hear what's being said about him in this case, is that the Isaiah you know?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to sustain the objection.
You still love your godson?
Yes, I do.
You intend to keep in touch with him no matter what happens?
Yes, I am.
Is there anything else you want the jury to know?
Yes. The Isaiah that I know, I don't know the Isaiah that is being portrayed. The one, like I said, that I know, I love him, and I'm going to always love him. And he's a good boy. I don't know this side.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a moment, please, Your Honor.
Yes.
Pass the witness.
Okay, Cross?
Yes. Ms. Smith, you had a wonderful relationship with Isaiah Chance, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
You've known him since he was a baby.
Yes,
You have witnessed what a wonderful, loving, supportive mother he had.
yes,
He grew up in a wonderful home,
yes.
no abuse.
None.
And you have also provided him with support.
Yes, I have.
You've even financially supported his music videos,
Yes,
the drill rap music videos that he produces.
yes,
And you have stated here that he was a confidant of yours, or he confided in you. Is that correct?
yes, he did.
Talked to you about his dreams and aspirations.
Yes,
He wanted to be a sea merchant. Is that correct?
yes,
And you've known him to have plenty of jobs. Is that also correct?
yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, redirect. Okay, may this witness be excused?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. You're free to go. All right, who's your next witness? Okay. Okay, again, I would ask the media not to broadcast the identity of this witness.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you please state your name?
Victoria Gray.
How are you related to Isaiah Chance?
I'm Isaiah's mother.
How old is Isaiah?
He's 23.
Right. I know this may be difficult for you, but can you tell the jury about Isaiah as a person, how you know him?
I know him because I gave birth to him. He's my second oldest. He is he's very I can't even say the word. His social intelligence usually attracts people. He is one that is very well reserved. Kind of always to himself. He does engages himself into philosophy, politics. He did start strategizing on making sure that he managed and operates a business plans, which is where we left off with he was trying to create his businesses. And pretty much, and he is a father who he loves his children as well and his family.
Did he live in Jacksonville his entire life?
Yes,
And did he live with you when he was in his formative years being raised?
yes.
How many brothers and sisters does he have?
From me, it's 4 girls and 2 boys.
And did they live with him, or at least for a portion of the
Yes.
time? How would you describe him as he was growing up in elementary and middle school?
He had a normal upbringing. Never really had any issues with him.
Was he gentle child?
He was reserved, very quiet. Didn't really ask for much.
Was he violent as a child?
No.
Did he play any sports when he was younger?
He did play sports when he was younger, but I did find out that what I placed him in was not his interest, and I later discovered that. So what I was putting him in, those were sports what he was not into. It was me.
Was one of those sports football?
Yes.
What happened when he didn't want to play football?
At once upon a time, we were in the middle of the game. Isaiah did not want, I guess he just decided he didn't want to do it. So in the middle of the play, he walked off the field. So of course, the coaches and everybody's like, get in the game, get in the game.
Was he helpful around the home?
He was very helpful. I do consider Isaiah to be my do-it-yourself type guy. Single mom. Generally, when it comes to hanging, being the man, if my garage is broken, I look to him to help me. I am not a DIY person.
What about how was he with his brothers and sisters?
Overall, again, Isaiah has always been to himself. He does come out and engages with family activity. But he come out and talk, and then he goes back into his room, and he enjoys reading. So he spent a lot of time reading.
Did he ever help his siblings, help them train or help them with their sports or their schoolwork or anything like that?
Well, coming up, my kids, we were exposed to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So we would all, as a family, when you say train,
Just help them get ready for anything. Or
I wouldn't say he would help them train, but we as a family, collectively, we all kind of work together.
and then, did you notice anything talking about school early on with Isaiah? Any issues he was having?
Early on, maybe in elementary stages, again, because Isaiah was always quiet, he wouldn't really speak or say much. So I thought that something was going on. So I did reach out and try to get help. But by the time we got to speech therapy, come to find out, he just chose not to talk.
What about throughout his school? Did you have other meetings with the school about Isaiah's progress?
When you say school, because he was in private school for majority part of his life, and then he went to public school. So
Well, either one, but let's start with public school. Did he have any issues with Duval County Public Schools?
issues at Duval County Public Schools was just more of Isaiah, I guess, trying to understand something that it wasn't, he didn't catch on right then. The way his mind or his brain processes things, I'll say it that way.
And he did graduate from high school, though.
Yes,
And did he start working after that?
yes.
Where was he working?
He's had many jobs. He worked at Jacksport. He did Uber Eats sometimes. I do believe it was Instacart. A lot of staffing agencies, because where I'm from, this quick to get on with a temp agency because he doesn't really have much experience coming from high school.
Did he have goals about what he wanted for a career?
Yes, he was actually in the process of becoming a merchant marine. He already had his TWIC badge. So the process where we left off was he had to test, which required some additional testing, what they needed to do. And we had to get scheduled. It was something with the schedules, we couldn't get aligned. So that's why we had left off with that.
Prior to this case, did you ever know Isaiah to have been arrested?
No,
And you mentioned earlier that he has children. How many children does he have?
3,
What are their names?
Cabri, Kylan, and Iceland.
How is he as a father?
From what I've seen, very hands-on. Love, I got a chance to see him different because he's my son, so his love for me was kind of different for his children. So I did get a chance to see him interact. He was there.
We've heard witnesses describe his relationship with you as you being his heart. Do you have a special relationship with Isaiah?
I love all my children.
Of course. Okay. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you would like this jury to hear about Isaiah, his character, his upbringing?
I mean, as far as his upbringing, he was a normal child. I do believe that as we start gauging into the adulthood, Isaiah did express during some time, he had quite a few different areas where he wanted to engage in. He was trying to decipher if he wanted to be an entrepreneur, if he wanted to just open up a business and do this. So he did come up with a business that he decided to stick with, which Isaiah believes that he wanted to, part of one of his businesses, he wanted to open up this community to give back to people who has lost hope. And I do recall that in Jonah, the word was sent a second time. So how Isaiah developed this plan as a businessman, he wanted to just make sure that people know that there is hope.
I assume I know the answer to this, but you plan to keep a lot of contact with Isaiah when he's in prison, correct?
That's correct.
That's all I had.
Okay, Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Gray, when Isaiah was in school, he was never diagnosed with any sort of mental health disability. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And during the time he was in school, he actually graduated with a high school diploma. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you just described him that he attracts people. He has this social intelligence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Charming, perceptive personality.
That's correct.
And that he is also very smart. Is that correct?
I don't know what your definition of very smart, because we all weigh things different.
Okay. Did you say that he was very industrious and was strategizing and had the ability to come up with a business plan?
I said we were strategizing, yes.
And that was for his business, correct?
Correct.
And he wanted to open up different businesses.
Well, we talked about mainly one.
Okay. And which one was that? The one where he is giving back? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. He also aspired and was going to be a merchant marine.
Correct.
And he had done a lot to progress and to be able to do that. Isn't that true, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
And you also have said that he is your do-it-yourself person. Anytime you needed something fixed, he was there to help you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he's the one, if you needed something installed like a smart TV, he was the one that would be able to do that.
That's correct.
So he does have skills that he was able to utilize and complete tasks for you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
These were things that you would have difficulty doing yourself, right? Installing the smart TV is not something that you found easy. Is that true, ma'am?
Yes.
And you relied upon him to be able to set all of that up for you.
I wouldn't say rely, because if he's not available, then I will, of course, pay someone to come do it.
Okay. But my point is he could do it.
He
Isn't
could
that
do
true,
it.
ma'am?
That's correct.
Okay. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, we're good. Redirect? Okay, may this witness be excused? Okay, thank you, ma'am. You're free to go. Do you have any more witnesses at this time? Pardon me?
Not unless.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Let's just go ahead. We'll take a quick afternoon recess. So if you all could just step outside for a few moments.
All right. All doors are open.
Okay, very good. Okay, so Mr. Chance, we're gonna have a seat. This is the part of the trial, or this phase of the trial, where you have to make the decision whether or not you wish to testify or remain silent. Again, do you realize that this decision is solely yours to make? Do you understand that? Okay, and have you made a decision whether or not you wish to testify or remain silent? What is your decision? Do you wish to testify or not? Okay. And has anyone, including your attorneys, in any way pressured you, threatened you, or coerced you in any way to make this decision? And has anyone made you any assurances regarding what the outcome of this penalty phase will be? And you realize no one can, because no one can predict the future, correct? Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so we come back in, you'll rest, and then, Ms. Toomey, you're ready to go?
Yes,
Okay, and then how many witnesses do you have this afternoon?
I have Dr. Eisenstein that's going to testify today, so that's all I have. I mean, that should take up my total
Okay,
5 of this.
well, it's just direct, right? Because you're not ready to go across yet.
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So let's take a quick 10-minute comfort break. We'll come back. You'll rest Mr. Petridis in front of the jury, and then Ms. Toomey, you'll get going with your doctor. Okay. counsel is present. Let's go ahead and bring in our jury.
All rise. All jurors are out there.
Okay, very good. Welcome back. Everyone have a seat. And Mr. Petridis, you have an announcement? Okay, very good. All right, Ms. Toomey, on behalf of Davion Murphy, would you like to call a witness?
Yes, sir. The principal, Hyman Eisenstein.
Okay, very good.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I affirm.
Okay, Ms. Toomey, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Dr. Hyman Eisenstein.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about your education, your background, your training, and what do you do?
I am a licensed clinical psychologist with a subspecialty in neuropsychology and forensic neuropsychology. I graduated from Loyola University in Chicago with a double master's in counseling psychology and also education and supervision. I went on to do my PhD, my doctorate work at University of Health Sciences Chicago Medical School. I graduated in 1982. I obtained my PhD following coursework, a dissertation, that's why it's a PhD, practicum. I completed also a one-year internship at Fairfield Hills Hospital, which is a large psychiatric state hospital in Connecticut, Fairfield, Connecticut. I went on to do a postdoctoral study at Yale University, West Haven VA Medical Center on the epilepsy unit. I was hired by the hospital where I did my internship. It was Fairfield Hills Hospital. I worked there for 5 years, primarily on the forensic unit. The unit was all-male forensic unit, individuals that were deemed either incompetent or were classified as being insane, statutory, not guilty by reason of insanity, people that could not be adjudicated in court, and they stayed on the unit until they were found to be competent or could return to court. I had my license in Connecticut. I actually had my license also in Illinois, where I'm from, but I did not practice in Illinois. Moved to Florida in 1986, a long time ago, 40 years ago. I became the head psychologist at Sunrise Rehabilitation Hospital. That was a rehab hospital in Sunrise, Florida. I became licensed in Florida. Actually, I was licensed actually even before we moved. I stayed at the hospital for 1 year, and then I went into private practice. The private practice consisted of consulting at a neurology practice, working as a consultant to several different psychiatric hospitals, and of course, developing my own private practice, which eventually just became my full-time occupation.
Okay. So you mentioned the word forensic. So what's the difference between a forensic, and we'll start with the psychologist, but a forensic psychologist and a psychologist? Is there a difference?
So a psychologist is somebody that is licensed by the state of Florida, completes the requirements and the ongoing education that's required by the state. The forensic aspect is an individual that deals with primarily with criminal aspects as it relates to both behavior and psychology, the interplay between the two.
The interplay between behavior and psychology is forensic psychology.
And the law.
And the law. Okay. All right. But you are a neuropsychologist, right?
Correct.
What's the difference between a neuropsychologist and a psychologist?
So my training was always in the organic brain matter. My graduate program was heavily based on medical, not psychological per se, but more medical related. Courses were of course, in testing, but also in neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, the understanding of the brain as how the brain functions from a cognitive or behavior, what the brain can or cannot do, versus looking at the brain in terms of the anatomy of or the pathology of the brain.
Okay, so neuro means brain.
Correct.
Okay, so then you're a neuropsychology, which you just described, and then they have neurologists, which would deal with the anatomy of the brain.
Correct.
All right, but you're not a neurologist.
No.
Have you ever been allowed to offer or give an opinion in the field of neuropsychology?
Yes.
And approximately how many times?
Well, over 40 years, probably 150 times.
Both state and federal court?
Primarily state, but it's been federal as well.
Any other jurisdictions beside Florida?
I evaluated in Texas. I evaluated in Georgia, but that was on a maybe 1 or 2 time basis. But it's basically been all in the state of Florida.
And do you have any hospital privileges?
Yes, I'm on staff at Mount Sinai Hospital in Miami Beach. I've been on staff for quite a while. I was actually on staff at several other hospitals, but they closed. So obviously not on staff there, but I've maintained my staff privileges at Mount Sinai for several decades.
And what would you need a privilege for going to a hospital or being able to, I guess, evaluate someone at a hospital? What would be the need for that?
So initially I was working on the rehab unit of the hospital, so that's why I obtained privileges. But over the years, I've maintained my privileges. On occasion, I evaluate psychiatric patients, especially those patients that I follow. So I follow them in the hospital as well. So having privileges just makes the process much more easy in terms of following my own patients.
Because if you didn't have the privilege, then you can't get into the hospital, right? I mean, you could, but you can't work, I guess, at the hospital.
Right,
that right?
Correct.
And do you belong to any professional associations?
Belong to the American Psychological Association, the Brain Injury Foundation of Florida.
And just briefly tell us what those are, if you can.
The American Psychological Association is the association that psychology individuals are associated with. It's across the country. They set guidelines, their rules, privileges. It's basically the organization that sets the standards for psychology.
Okay, so standards that you follow as a neuropsychologist.
Correct.
Is that something that you have to renew or pay for, or how does that work?
The membership is on an ongoing basis. Correct.
Okay. And then what about the other organization?
The other organization is there's the brain injuries. Again, the individual that deal with individuals that unfortunately have brain injury and try to help support, educate, and have knowledge of those individuals and the challenges they face.
All right. I think you did this briefly, but can you expand on your experience in working with patients or individuals, clients, if you will?
So just one other aspect of my training, I am board certified also from the American Board of Professional Neuropsychology. So that just adds another layer in terms of my education, my experiences, and treated amongst my peers as being qualified to render opinions as a clinical neuropsychologist.
Let me stop you there, doctor. What did you have to do in addition to your education to become board certified?
The exam was a very rigorous exam. It entailed presenting a work product of neuropsychology, a report that I've issued many, many times, and another report justifying why my report and why I use certain measures. And then that was accepted by the committee. Now, it also required a certain number of hours. I believe it was 2,000 hours of work and training. But then there was a 3-hour oral examination with a committee. The committee, it consisted of 3 different areas of neuropsychology. After one was first admitted to take the exam, one aspect was neuropsychology, test measurements. The other was ethics. The third, maybe it was just general standards in psychology. But it was a broad area of testing to make sure that, again, one is qualified and one is indeed capable of performing neuropsychological examinations and evaluations at the highest level possible.
Can you explain to us, when you talked about test measurements, how that kind of is incorporated in neuropsychology? Like, why does that make a difference, and why does it matter?
So as a neuropsychologist or as a psychologist, we conduct psychological and what I refer to as neuropsychological test measurement. The measurements are based on normative data, meaning the tests are all normed based on populations across the United States. It's varied in gender, sex, education, age. So every test, it has a standard score with it. The tests are well established. They're gold standards among some of the tests. The others are more specific for brain behavior. So it's a combination of using some standardized psychological tests, some very specific neuropsychological tests, and that's what we refer to as a test battery, a battery of a variety of different measures that are all standardized. And once one, of course, is trained to administer these and to interpret them, and then to render an opinion based on the totality of all the testing. The testing goes on for quite a long time. It's to try to understand an individual, their strengths, their weaknesses, their test performance. So this is how a neuropsychologist differs from a regular psychologist, but it's extra training and extra use of different measures. And of course, what's extremely important is that we just don't rely just on tests, but it's a clinical examination. It's an interview process. It's looking at the individual and understanding how they perform, how they react, and then, of course, looking at collateral data, whatever there may be, to help understand the totality of the individual. So the net result is putting it all together and then rendering an opinion based on all the different aspects.
Okay. What about in the context of individuals that are facing the death penalty? Have you been involved in evaluating those individuals, those kinds of individuals in that circumstance?
So I've evaluated numerous individuals that have been both on both on death row as well as individuals that are facing the death penalty. I've been doing this quite a while. The individuals, whether they would be already on death row or the individuals that are facing the death penalty throughout the state of Florida, I meet with them, evaluate them, spend time with them face to face, try to establish a working relationship or rapport so that they feel comfortable to perform, to talk, to spend time in terms of administering the various different neuropsychological measures. But it's across the board. The battery is basically standardized, whether or not the individual will be facing the death penalty or the individual would be ready on death row, or an individual may be a totally non-criminal case, forensic case. The batteries are basically the same because we're looking at brain functioning. So brain functioning is the same across the board. It doesn't make a difference where you are and what you're doing. It's a question of how the individual is performing based on their history, based on trauma, based on events that occurred in their life, and trying to understand their level of abilities.
Okay. And were you retained by me or my office in the state of Florida versus Davy and Murphy?
Correct.
And what were you tasked with doing? What did we ask you to do?
So you asked me to perform a standardized neuropsychological examination, an evaluation that would look at his overall cognitive functioning, his brain behavior functioning, how he performs, his abilities, his cognitive abilities, his emotional abilities, his functioning across the board. It also includes, obviously, looking at his background, looking at what he has been doing throughout his life, getting a better picture of the individual, looking at records, reviewing records on his behalf, whether they would be hospital records, school records, disability records. Again, whatever is available in terms of looking at, to try to come up with a complete picture and understanding of the individual is basically the same across the board, but that's really what your office asked me to do.
Okay. And did you in fact meet with Davion Murphy?
Yes, I did.
Approximately, was that in person?
It was face to face, correct?
Face to face. At the jail?
At the Hillsborough Jail,
Okay. And approximately how many times did you meet with him face to face?
7 times.
And when you met with him those 7 times, was he cooperative?
He was always cooperative.
Did he do what you asked of him to do?
He performed every task, never had any problems in terms of saying that he was tired or he didn't want to do it, or he said no. He was very cooperative.
All right. So tell us, take us through what you did. Your first meeting. How do you conduct your evaluation?
So first we want to just introduce ourselves with the individual. I think the first time actually he was on lockdown. In Hillsborough, there's the general testing area where everyone, lawyers and psychologists come. That's where they bring the individual to to be evaluated. The first time he was I think, in the black box it's referred to.
Okay.
And they took me to another unit. And he was shackled but even under those circumstances, he was cooperative, willing to talk, never gave us a problem in terms of saying, I'm too tired, I don't want to, he's quitting. That never happened. So throughout the 7 times, and sometimes he was in the box, most of the time we evaluated him in the general diagnostic building, and he was brought down and he cooperated and he stayed as long as we needed. He never said, let's stop. If he needed to take a break, of course, gave him a break, but he was extremely cooperative.
And respectful?
He was respectful. His language was good. Never used curse words for the most part. So he was very respectful.
One of your easier clients, would you say?
Objection leading.
Overall, you can answer.
He was definitely less challenging than some other individuals that present much more difficulty in terms of their level of cooperation. Now, I just may add that level of cooperation is really important because
Objection non-responsive.
Sustained. What's your next question?
Why is someone's cooperation in your evaluation so important?
the reason it is so important is because they are giving full effort. They're trying the best. Part of doing a neuropsychological examination is the first question one has to ask, are these results true results? What I'm going to be talking about, is this really an accurate reflection of the individual? So he tries. He wasn't trying to fake.
And is there a separate test that you administer to someone to make sure or to ensure that they're not faking?
Correct. So those tests are called validity measures or malingering measures. Part of any neuropsychological test battery includes malingering measures. We gave him several malingering measures, and he scored within the normal range. He wasn't trying to look worse. He wasn't trying to fake. He wasn't trying to play worse than he is, but he gave us a true, accurate reflection of what his abilities are. So that's why cooperation is really important. You know that you're not going to have difficulty or someone's trying to play games with you.
Sure. All right, so let's talk about some of the evaluations that, well, let me first ask you this. Out of those 7 times that you met with Davion Murphy, approximately how many hours would you approximate that to be?
It was approximately 22 hours.
And you meet with the person, you collect records that you would deem appropriate, and then do you also attempt to do what's called like collateral interviews with family members, friends, and things like that?
Correct.
And did you attempt to do at least all of those things?
So the records were, certainly there was a good amount of records, both medical records, educational records, DOC records. As far as talking and meeting with collateral sources, it was limited. Spent some time with his mother, but it was a limited conversation, and certainly perhaps other people, it would have been helpful to get more information, but it just didn't happen.
Just can we approach for a second?
Yep. step out momentarily, not long.
All rise.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone have a seat. All right, Ms. Toomey, so I think your witness just, and I didn't hear it, but I think you just testified that he reviewed some DOC records, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so what, is he gonna be relying upon those records?
Are you gonna be relying upon those records, Doctor?
Right, so records that were included with the hospital records, yes, it's mentioned in my report. Educational records, they were in my report. So whatever is in my report is what was relied on.
Okay, and so I guess, because it's just a little tricky, working around the term DOC records. So, that's why I'm asking if you're gonna need to refer to those records, then specifically the DOC records, we have to come up with a solution.
Well, really not. I'm not looking at jail records per se.
Right,
It's more in terms of the medical,
okay,
in terms of the school records, anything that's related to his evaluation and understanding his academic performance or how he's been treated medically.
okay. Okay, so going forward, I would just ask that if you're referring to medical records or educational records or testing records, we just use that term as opposed to DOC.
Okay.
records. Okay, does that work for you, Mr. Harmon?
That's fine, Judge. I was just, well, Dr. Warner had advised me during the evaluation this week, and the defendant was relating a great deal to her about his carcerative journey through the DOC, different CIs, different correctional institutions, treatment he received there. And I think there's an argument that goes to refute the ultimate opinion that's going to be tendered either through Dr. Eisenstein or through subsequent experts about brain damage. So,
Okay, so are you telling me you're gonna need to get into DOC records?
it just depends on where Dr. Rubino goes with his opinions, I guess, and
Okay,
where we go with this next week. So.
cross that bridge when we get to it. So if you think it is gonna be necessary for you to get into DOC records, you just need to let me know.
Yes. Yes.
Once the defense experts are done testifying, and then we'll figure out what to do.
Yes, Your Honor. I was going to speak to counsel. That was my first avenue to see how she felt about it, because I knew Dr. Eisenstein had been provided those records. and
Right.
I think Dr. Rubino was also, if I'm not mistaken.
I think there's a confusion about the records. There's two sets of Shands records. And I guess there's a Shands in Jacksonville, there's a Shands in Gainesville. So I think there was some sort of confusion with what was provided or.
The records we were provided, I brought the discovery pleading that I was provided. It's DOC records, Social Security records,
That was
school
the med-
records.
That's not the most recent one. That was taken off there.
Okay, Department of Children and Family Records at Edward White High School.
Yeah, now it's taken off there.
There was a small amount of records from, I believe it's Shands, Gainesville, where the defendant was being transported there from correctional institutions for treatment for a hand injury and
Yes.
some other stuff.
Mhm.
So that was what we were provided before today, so.
Okay, all right, well, since we're just conducting, or since you're conducting just the direct examination of the doctor at this point, I would just ask, at this point, just don't refer to DOC records. Okay,
Okay.
all right, very good. Okay, let's bring him back in.
Yes, Judge. All rise. There's right there.
Okay, very good. Everyone have a seat again. And Ms. Jimmy, you may proceed.
All right, so let's start with some of the tests that you administered to Mr. Davion Murphy. Which one would you like to start with?
So first, the validity measures that I mentioned, I gave Mr. Murphy several different validity measures. I gave him what's called the TOM test of memory malingering. It's not a memory test, but it's a validity malingering measure, and his score was on the third trial was 48 out of 50. First 40 out of 50, then 48 out of 50, and 48 out of 50. So that score is within the normal limits. He's not faking, again, he's not malingering, he's not trying to look worse than he is. On the advanced clinical solution, he got 41 out of 50, 82%. It's also within the normal limits. And then reliable digit span, another test from the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale 4th edition. Again, it was indicative of good effort, average effort on his part. There's no indication that he is trying to look worse than he is. He's putting forth full effort, and the results are a valid indication of his functioning.
Well, let me ask you this. Since you've met with Davion Murphy 7 times, are these tests done in the beginning only, at the end, or every time, or something else?
So the order doesn't make a difference. There's no, obviously one needs to do or should do the validity measures before, because if the individual is not performing at his best, the results afterwards are all skewed. So one has to establish that he is giving full effort. That probably has to be in the beginning. But as far as all the other tests, really there's no order, there's no specific order. It all depends upon the equipment. You have to bring in equipment each time, how much you're bringing and what you're doing. And again, the order really doesn't make a difference.
Okay. You said equipment. What kind of equipment do you use?
So a lot of times people come to a neuropsychologist in their office, so all their equipment is there. But here you have to travel with your equipment.
Mhm.
The equipment includes test booklets, it includes forms, it includes blocks, it includes various different items that the individual has to manipulate with their hands. It's a variety of, each test has its own set of material, but it's all something that each time you have to go through the screening device. They check out exactly what you have, make sure that it is acceptable, and then you bring it in, and there's just this, if you bring in everything at one time, I would be coming in with 2 briefcases. So this is just basically, you bring in a little each time, and then you conduct those tests, and then you move on to the next set of tests the next time one is engaged in the testing.
Let me just ask you, did you conduct, well, I guess we'll get to those evaluations in a minute, but before we do that, can we just talk about, did you gather some background information about Davion Murphy?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
So first, as far as he was born to Mrs. Serena Beeks and Mr. David Bernard Murphy Sr. on the east side of Jacksonville. He's the older son of the union with a younger brother, David Murphy Jr. David is the oldest of mom's children with 4 additional younger siblings, Adam Gooden, Sierra Gooden, Kimura Wilson, and Camilla Wilson. Mr. Murphy Sr. has a daughter, Regina, who is an older sister to Davion, and Zion, who is a younger brother to him. So there's brothers and sisters on both sides. Davion itself was never married, and he has no children.
All right, and then did you, through looking at the school records that you were provided, did you come up with an educational history for Davion Murphy?
So it's a very complicated history because Mr. Murphy attended 14 different schools, approximately. Some of them were in the Dade County, in the Duval County public school system. There was testing that was completed at an early age. And then he went to several different schools, different places, repeated several grades along the way. He was in, it just goes on.
Well, let me kind of help you break it down. So when you said that he attended 14 different schools, would that mean he was also moving to different environments or different places as well?
Correct,
Was that something that you learned in those records?
correct.
All right. And then was there an evaluation, a psychoeducational evaluation that you looked at when Davion was 8 years old?
Correct.
What did that give you any insight as to his school?
So at 8 years old, he was Dr. Serena Bloomfield did some psychological testing. He was given the WISC for children, the Wexler Adult Intelligence Scale for Children, and he obtained a full-scale IQ score of 81, 10th percentile, the low average range of intellectual functioning.
Tell us, maybe in layman's terms, what that means. What does that mean?
It's a low score. 100 is the average. 81 is at the 10th percentile. If someone scores 100 on an IQ, that means that's 50 percentile of the population. It's either better or worse. This is at the lower, in other words, 90% of the population is better, 10% is lower. Because of his low score and his low score across all academic areas, he then was entitled to be placed in a variety of different programs.
Tell us about some of those programs.
So he was eligible to be placed in exceptional student education that's called ESE. He was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, combined type, that's ADHD, global academic delay, nonverbal learning disabilities, that's NVLD, and specific learning disabilities, that's SLD.
Okay, so let me stop you there. I want to break that down. The combined type ADHD, what does that mean?
So that means that there's both two elements. There's the attentional aspect as well as the hyperactivity. So he had problems with, there are individuals that have just one or the other, but he has both. In other words, he had problems with attention, concentration, and also excess energy and hyperactivity, inability to basically sit still and move around constantly.
Judge, can we take first roll?
Yes?
This will be quick.
Doctor, do you happen to know, when we're talking about this full-scale IQ score that was performed or obtained on Davion when he was 8 years old, was that when he was in the 3rd or 4th grade, or do you remember?
I think he was in the 3rd grade.
Okay, and do you have a name of the school that he was going to at that time? city built more or?
Perhaps.
Okay. Okay, you stopped, I think, at explaining the combined type of ADHD. When you say global academic delay, what does that mean?
He had difficulty across the board. There wasn't any specific in terms of one area, but it was more global in terms of every area of academic ability. It was compromised and it was delayed.
Okay. And then nonverbal learning disability versus a specific learning disability. What is the difference and what are each?
So since there was a split between the verbal and the nonverbal, so the nonverbal was more impaired, so that's why it was a nonverbal learning disability at that time. And it was specific learning disabilities related to different areas of functioning. Again, they targeted almost every area of disability.
Okay. And was Davion also given an IEP or an individualized education program?
So he was given IEPs across the board almost every year.
And starting when? From time he was 8 on or?
Right, 8 on. And they were relying on this IQ that was done when he was 8 or 9. And there was a recommendation that they retest him, but that never was done. So the IEP was based on this IQ that was performed when he was 8 or 9 years old, even though the recommendation was that he should be retested. And the reason he should have been retested is because the skills of an 8 or 9-year-old obviously are not as demanding as they are from somebody who is older. And as you're older, there's more demands and the skills sets are quite different. And the IQ could have changed, and it would have been reflective.
Let me ask you that. Does someone's IQ change, or is it constant throughout their entire life, or what's the feel on that?
So IQ should be stable, but it should be stable at a point where there's a certain level of developmental maturity. So at 8 or 9, the individual is quite young, and that really is not a set determination in terms of what their IQ really should be or is. Okay. Once an individual is a little more mature and is a little older, so that IQ should be more or less stable.
Understood. Do you have an age that someone's IQ would more or less stabilize? Does that make sense?
So it should probably be around 16, maybe 15, 16. In other words, past puberty, where the individual already is like early adulthood. So that is probably the point where one would look at more stability in terms of IQ.
Okay. Anything else other than the 14 different schools? You mentioned the IEP program, the ESE, some diagnoses while he was in school. Anything else that you utilized in rendering your opinions that you're going to give here today?
So first, he was given the Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test numerous times. The records indicated that his score was never level 3 or higher. In grade 4, 5, 6, he repeatedly obtained level 1 in reading and writing. During high school, over multiple administrations, his scores were consistently at level 2. Now, an individual that scores level 1 is basically failing. That's not acceptable. 2 is also very low, and it should be more like 3 and above. So for the most part, he was low performance, below proficiency levels, and core academic skills with no marked improvement over time. So there was a consistent failure, and as the test was demonstrated over time, it really did not improve.
Are these the FCAT test that kids have to pass or take every certain number of years that they're in school in order to progress and advance?
Correct. Now, because of the FCATs and because of his academic difficulties, he was diagnosed with a mental disability and he received Social Security disability. That was diagnosed early on with the attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity, prescribed medications, and he was taking either Ritalin or Vyvanse as a child. And because of the diagnosis, he received Social Security disability, an indication of his difficulty in receiving the disability benefit. In addition, he had behavioral problems. There was fighting, there was being kicked out. At some point, he moved out from his home, went with a paternal grandmother. There was difficulty with smoking, gambling, fighting. And so there was a combination of both academic difficulties as well as behavioral difficulties.
And
Now-
that, when you said Davian was kicked out by his mother, would that have been in the 10th grade?
Correct.
And he went to live where? I didn't catch that.
With his paternal grandmother, Mrs. Phyllis Murphy. Now, what's also noted when he was either the 3rd or 4th grade, he had to repeat the grade, and he received a comment in the records of EMH, of educatively mentally handicapped, which is an indication of his low IQ, his low functioning, and that was noted when he was either 3rd or 4th grade. He repeated the 4th grade, and this was something that was noted in the records probably at the age of 10, 9, 10, something in that level. He was kicked out of multiple schools due to his behavior. He was sent to Jacksonville Youth Academy Level 6 program for 9 months from age 17 to 18. Part of the program, he was forced to go to school. Then he repeated the 11th grade, which he had not completed before. Somehow his mother was able to reinstate him in public school for the 12th grade. He didn't graduate.
Let me just stop you there, doctor, for 1 second. I want to bring you back to just a couple of things, to highlight a couple of things. He repeated the 4th grade, you said?
Correct,
And then he also repeated with the 11th grade as well?
correct.
Okay. With regards to medical or psychiatric history, such as any injuries to his head or what have you, can you go through those with us, please?
So there's multiple head injuries that Davian sustained. He was diagnosed again with the ADHD, and he was prescribed Ritalin, Vyvanse later on. ADHD used to be called minimal brain damage. That was what it was called back in the day. It's changed, and now it's called ADHD. The thinking was that this is a brain impairment. So I mentioned that as of note, that early on, he was diagnosed with ADHD and was taking medication.
And is there a time where Davian and his younger brother were seeing a psychiatrist?
There was notes that he was seeing a psychiatrist, this Dr. Louis Quinones, every few weeks for several years. The records indicate visits from the year 2007 through 2010.
And how old is Davion as he sits here? Do you know?
He now is 28 or 29
29.
at the present time.
Yes. When, do you have his birthday on there?
His birthday is January 10th, 1997.
So in 2007 through 2010, Davion and his brother, his younger brother, were seeing a psychiatrist.
Correct.
All right. And was there also, can you tell us about an incident with a golf cart when he was 7 or 8 years old?
He reported crashing a golf cart into a car wash, hitting his head on the steering wheel at 7 or 8 years old, and he remained with bad headaches after that incident.
Okay, what about at age 14?
So he was a passenger in a car that crashed into a tree. He ran away and did not seek medical treatment.
All right, then I'm going to jump to 2015. Was there a time where he had fractured a bone in his hand, in his right hand?
He fractured his third metatarsal. He was evaluated at Shands Jacksonville, and a clamshell splint was placed.
All right, and then January 11th of 2017, anything of significance on that day?
So he was taken by fire rescue to Shands Jacksonville after suffering a gunshot wound to the groin with rupture of the corpus cavernosum of his penis without urethral injury. So the bullet remained in his lateral thigh tissue. Surgery was performed and he was healed well.
So according to my math, my calculations, Davion would have been about 20 years old.
Correct.
And then anything of significance in February of 2017?
So February 1st of 2017 is just a few weeks after this previous trauma to the groin and to the penis from a gunshot wound. He was involved in a motor vehicle accident after a police chase, and he was taken to the emergency room at Shands Jacksonville. Records report a Glasgow Coma scale of 13 out of a possible 15.
What does that mean?
So when an individual is faced with trauma, so they are assessed on the Glasgow Coma scale. The Glasgow Coma scale deals with very basic orientation, motor, verbal functioning, level of awakeness. It's basically to see whether or not the individual is up and about and oriented and can follow verbal commands and motor commands. So he scored 13 out of 15, meaning that he had a altered mental state. He wasn't totally responsive. He was responsive and non-responsive. So 13 out of 15 means that there was some trauma to the brain significantly enough that he was not scoring 15 out of 15 on this Glasgow Coma scale. He was given a CAT scan, a CT scan of the brain, and it showed no acute intracranial hemorrhage, mass effect, or territorial infarct. So the brain itself didn't show any broken bones.
And no bleeding in the brain, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there were no.
Ejection, bleeding.
Sustain as deleting.
What does that mean?
So they did a basic brain scan to show no broken bones, no bleeding, but they did not do an MRI scan, which could have shown there was shearing or there was tearing or any other level of brain damage that is more commonly found when more sophisticated neurodiagnostic testing like the MRI is conducted, but they did not conduct it.
Okay, and let's jump to November of 2023. Can you tell us about Mr. Davion being a passenger in a car, again, involved in a motor vehicle accident?
So he was involved in a motor vehicle accident with a truck. He presented at the emergency department of Shands, Jacksonville, where he was diagnosed with dorsal which is back pain, pain in the right forearm, pain in the right elbow, pain in the left hand. He reported hitting his head very hard. What I may just add about all these different incidents, that there's what's called a synergistic effect of brain damage. There's multiple brain damages, and when there is, it's more than just cumulative. It's not just adding one, each one of these separate incidents, but each one presents with more trauma to the brain, more injury, and the injuries that are, again, superimposed one upon the other are far worse than one individual separate. So it's sustaining multiple head injuries over a relatively short period of time.
Okay, so now I want to ask you, we've kind of touched on 7 years of age, 8, 12, 20, and on. Is this type of behavior consistent with a lack of a parental figure in their life,
Correct.
such as having one's father be arrested and be sent to prison for life?
That's correct. And then basically being raised by a single mom.
Objection, non-responsive.
Okay, please ask a question.
And then having to be raised by a single mother, right?
That's correct.
Did Davion ever explain or complain about anxiety or depression to you?
He said that he had anxiety, he had depression. At some point, he was taking Seroquel, which is a strong medication. It's an antipsychotic, actually, to deal with anxiety, depression. I think he's requested it at different points, but he was definitely taking it at some point.
Okay, and that's an antipsychotic, you said,
Correct.
medication? All right, so let's talk about, before we get into the general IQ testing that you performed, can you tell us about some of the evaluations that you did? For example, the Dallas Kaplan executive function system. What kind of test is that? What does it do? What does it tell you? What were the results?
So the Dallas Kaplan is a test of executive function systems. It's divided into 5 separate tests. Each test has a sample section, and after the sample section, there is the test itself. There's different conditions. The test is very sensitive to overall brain impairment, cognitive impairment, and it's certainly a very good indicator in terms of one's abilities or where there's a lack of ability.
Were those the pages that we were going through?
Correct.
Which are called like raw data, I guess, if you
Yeah,
call
it's
it?
the raw data. The
If I can approach.
Yep.
About this trail making test. I know I was inquisitive about what the test was like, and you showed it to me. So, Judge, I don't think the state has any objection, but I'm going to just show Dr. Eisenstein on the screen so that we can just discuss it for the jury's information.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so I'm showing you, just for a demonstrative, the trail making test. What is this? It's a box, it's got some numbers, some letters. What is the individual asked with doing?
So this is trail making test part 1.
Okay,
And this is visual scanning. Now, each one of these tests has a practice section. The practice section is make sure that the individual understands what is asked of them when they get to the actual test itself.
is that kind of like a control? Like in science, kind of like the control, practice, do the real thing?
Yeah, it's right. It's in order to make sure that when the test is being performed, they understand what is asked for them and they're doing it correctly to the best of their ability.
And this one, what would have been asked of Mr. Davion Murphy to do?
So this is asked to just cross off the 3s. It's called visual scanning.
Okay,
And you have a pencil and then it is not timed. Just make sure that they get it correct. And they cross off, as you can see, all the 3s on this practice section.
and how is this type of thing scored?
So it's scored basically several ways. It's timed. It's converted to a standard score. A standard score is similar to an IQ score. Each one, depending upon their performance, and I can, for example, now this score of 36 is not from the practice section. It's from the test itself, which is on the next
Okay.
pages.
Okay,
And then the standard score is 5, which equals an IQ of 75.
okay. So I'm just going to show you one more. My understanding is these come in larger papers and you have to kind of cut them or something?
Right, so when I turned over the data, so the test itself is actually on 2 sides. So it becomes a little difficult to copy it because it's 2 sides of 2 pages. So it had to be cut and sort of put together.
And that last test, is that 36 indicated it took 36 seconds
Correct.
to,
In other words, not on the
Cross.
practice section, but on the actual test itself, which is
Yes.
on the following page.
what about this one? Trail making test,
This is condition 2.
okay.
And the individual is asked to draw a line, connect the numbers in order. So
Okay.
as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ignoring the letters and just following the sequence of the numbers.
And what is this number, 59? What is that?
59 seconds, which equals a standard score of 2. As I mentioned, these are all normed. So one looks up in the normative manual. A 2 is actually equal to a IQ of 60, which is extremely low.
I just want to show you one more, just for an example. Condition 3,
So this is letter sequencing, condition 3. And here the individual is just asked to connect the letters in order, A, B, C, D, E.
okay, and then this.
50 seconds to complete, again, the next section,
Mhm.
which is a standard score of 4, which is equal to a 60. Again, very low.
Right. I'm getting back to you, I'm just gonna. All right, so let's see. What about the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test? What's that?
So that is a test of receptive language. the individual is shown 4 pictures. They're told a word, and they have to pick out the picture that describes the word that is stated.
Okay, so like, give us an example.
So for example, let's say the word is ladder. So there's 4 pictures. One's a ladder, the other one may be a chair, maybe a tool, obviously not a ladder. That's one of the simpler tests. Tests usually progress. In general, tests are simpler at the beginning level and progress and become more difficult as it goes on. So then, of course, if they would say either A, B, C, or D, or just point, they don't even have to be verbal for this part, simply to point to the correct picture. And it's called receptive language, meaning an individual understands spoken language.
Okay. And what were your results on that test?
So he obtained a standard score of 52, which is extremely low, a percentile of 0.1, and a grade equivalent of 2.3.
Let's go to the general intellectual status examination that you performed. Did you perform that?
Yes, so I gave him the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, 4th edition, which is the gold standard of IQ.
Is there a new edition? I think it's the 5th edition.
The 5th edition recently came out.
So I guess my question for you, was the 4th edition the correct edition to administer to Davion?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so tell us how this works.
The individual is given the test. The test has several different sections. The test has been revised over time, many times, and it's improved. Quality is improved. The standardization has improved. The questions have improved to become more relevant. It goes between a nonverbal, a verbal, nonverbal, verbal. There's several different subsections. There's a point where the individual they stop if they can't get a certain number correct based on the criteria of the individual subtest. Then the scores are calculated. They convert what's called a raw score to a standard score. The standard scores then are added, and then one gets composite scores in different domains, and ultimately a full-scale IQ score.
That was a lot. Did you determine what Davion's full IQ score was based upon all what you just said?
So he obtained a full-scale IQ score of 72.
What does that mean?
So 72 is at the 3rd percentile of the general population. If one looks at the 95th confidence intervals, it goes between 68 to 77.
Okay, well, let me slow you down just a little bit. Okay, I want to back up to the 3rd percentile amongst his peers. So does that mean 97% of Davion's peers did better than he did? No?
Correct.
Yes?
Correct. In other words, on a scale that has the entire population.
Yes.
So 50% are going to score at 100, and then when this is 2 standard deviations below the mean, so then we're already dealing with the very small percentage, meaning only 3% of the population. At 97% is scoring better.
All right. And that score, what does that score tell us, if anything?
So this score is in the, classified in the borderline, but it's really in the, with the 95th percentile, which the bands are, meaning if the test would be given over and over, so the score would fall somewhere between an IQ of 68 and an IQ of 77. But the IQ itself of 72 actually qualifies Mr. Murphy for being in the intellectually disabled range, meaning that an IQ, according to both the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and the American Board of the Developmental Disability, this score at 72, what they refer to as a score of 70 plus or minus 5. But that's a rough estimate because this is a little more accurate in
And
terms
that
of
plus or minus 5, is that the standard error of
measurement. Correct.
measurement? Okay.
Right. So this is the same idea. The band of 68 to 77, it's roughly 5 points plus or minus, meaning again, tests are not 100% accurate. There's no such thing as a 100% accurate test. It doesn't exist. So there's always a band of error on any test, whether it would be a physical test or a psychological test. Again, it depends upon the examiner. I mean, I've given this test probably 1,000 times. But there's always an error measurement and how you score it. And it could be maybe there's a difference in scores. You know, there's a difference, a deviation. But 72 is a score that qualifies for a intellectual disability classification.
Okay. And based upon your profession and your experience in neuropsychology, I'm sure you're familiar with the term, the definition of what intellectual disability means legally,
Correct.
right? Do you know what the 3 elements are for that?
Yes. So the 3 elements are onset before age 18.
Okay.
IQ has to be in this range concurrent before the age of 18 and after the age of 18. And adaptive functioning has to be commensurate. One area of adaptive functioning has to be, according to the DSM, compromised. And again, that goes across a lot of different areas of adaptive functioning, but also has to be level of impairment prior to the age of 18.
Okay, before we get to why this technically doesn't equate to intellectual disability as defined by the state of Florida, what deficits in adaptive behavior, did you perform any evaluations or tests regarding Davion's adaptive behavior? And what is, well, first I should ask, what is adaptive behavior?
So adaptive functioning means skills of daily life. It goes across several different domains, different areas. It means areas of communication, executive functioning. It means the ability to perform academically. It goes a variety of different domains. Basically, an individual, how they're functioning, can they function? Can they follow directions? Can they act independently? What's their level in terms of their overall level we assess of adaptive functioning?
Okay, is that kind of like daily living, or is that something different?
No, it's absolutely daily living skills.
Okay.
And then again, it depends upon the level of severity. It could be mild, it could be moderate, it could be severe. Mild meaning that you would need some support in what they're doing. Moderate, obviously, it's worse, and severe is they're not capable of really doing any of the daily living skills independently.
So you have a spectrum from one extreme to the other, and you have individuals that are in between those two spectrums.
That's correct.
Okay. So let's talk about this manifestation during the period from conception to age 18. Were you able to determine, based upon the school records and your testing, whether or not his scores were or met that intellectual disability from conception to the age 18, and if not, why?
So as far as adaptive functioning, clearly there was academic difficulties. Now, academic difficulties is one of the criteria of adaptive functioning. So yes, I mean, he did have difficulty with academic functioning, and he had difficulty certainly then with adaptive functioning. There was other areas that he could have had difficulties with in terms of adaptive functioning, in terms of functioning independently. It's unclear how he performed, but as I mentioned, he did receive it was stated a categorization of the EEH, emotionally handicapped disability. So which means that there was some thought mentioned with all his other academic problems that also he would be perhaps diagnosed with ID. But the issue became in terms of when he was early on, age 8 or 9, when he received this IQ of 81. Now, the truth is that the school system itself had recommended that he should be retested. And again, an IQ at the age of...
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. It's non-responsive.
Okay, what's your next question?
What's the significance of only giving one IQ test at the age of 8 for you?
So it could be misleading. It could be not really accurate in terms of really what his true abilities were. An IQ at the age of 8 or 9 is not reflective of really what his IQ is.
Judge, I object. Asked and answered.
Okay, sustained.
All right, sir. What's the Flynn effect?
So the Flynn effect.
Flynn.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Is it Flynn or Flint? Flynn.
FLYNN. Flynn.
Thank you, sir.
So Flynn stated that IQs over time actually have gone up, but are not reflective of really what the true IQ really should be. And it's based on a formula that is accepted by the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, as well as the manual of the American Association of Developmental Disabilities. So both those are the two manuals that basically cover what the criteria for IQ are.
And, go ahead.
And anyway, the Flynn effect basically states that from the time that the test is published until the time the test is given, there's a factor of 0.3 that is multiplied by those years and then subtracted from the IQ that was actually obtained.
Why is that?
Again, because
Objection to relevance, Judge.
Overruled, go ahead.
IQ is thought to have been higher over the population, so the Flynn is a correction factor that is entered into the IQ score. So an IQ of 72, based on the time that the test was published until the time it was given, actually drops it down 5 points to 67. So with the Flynn effect, his IQ is 67, which is more in terms of the intellectual disabled range than 72, which is also. So both of them are, but it's just a further.
Let me stop you there for 1 second. When you're talking about that lower range, are you first talking about applying the Flynn effect to the 81 IQ score?
So the The IQ, when the IQ was given at 81,
Yes.
it was, that test was just on the market. The Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, so it's fairly a new addition. So there wasn't too much of a Flynn effect based on the test at that point.
Okay.
Versus when I gave the WACE 4, so there was more of a gap between the time of the administration and from the time that it was actually, the test was published.
Because now we're into the WACE 5.
Correct. So the WACE 5 would have less of a Flynn effect.
Okay. All right. And based upon all the records that you reviewed, all the records that you reviewed, your evaluation of Davion Murphy on those 7 separate occasions over 20 hours, do you have an opinion regarding whether Davion Murphy was under the influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance at the time of this offense?
Yes.
What is it?
So he was under extreme mental and or emotional disturbance. As I mentioned, the IQ scores technically meet the criteria for intellectual disability. There's certainly enough indication in the records that they are. The reason why I say technically is because from a legal definition, it may miss because of some of the different testing that was conducted. However, I think in reality, he really does meet the criteria in terms of ID.
Okay.
And so that's certainly the mental aspect. Executive functioning is, as mentioned here in the trails, shows this compromise, impairment. The emotional disturbance, also the fact that he reports taking medication for both the attention deficit disorder and the anxiety and depression, receiving a disability. So again, you put it all together, and he was certainly under the extreme mental or emotional disturbance.
All right. And again, having met with Mr. Murphy, Davion Murphy, those 7 times, reviewing all the records that you've reviewed, do you have an opinion regarding whether or not Davion Murphy had the capacity to appreciate the criminality of his conduct or conform his conduct to the requirements of law? And do you believe it was substantially impaired?
So again, there was, as I mentioned, the emotional, the psychiatric, the psychological, the neuropsychological impairment, the deficits that he had in terms of impulse control, in terms of decision-making, in terms of weighing options, in terms of a difficult situation, making better decisions, better judgment, better reasoning. These are all part of executive functioning, frontal lobe activities that he demonstrated impairment, compromise. So given unfortunate circumstances, he was unable to conform his behavior, and he certainly was acted under the behavior that he didn't appreciate it and couldn't conduct his behavior to the requirements of the law.
Are there any other mental health factors in Davion Murphy's background that would mitigate against the death penalty that we have not spoken about, that you can think of?
Well, again, I've conducted testing that shows the neurocognitive from a behavioral point of view. His brain has been compromised with a lot of injuries, a lot of difficulties, academic, a difficult life, meeting the criteria for intellectual disabilities, which certainly would compromise his ability And again, looking at the structure of the brain, which I recommended, that we look not only at the outer performance, but also actually what the brain looks like in terms of the structure of the brain, which again is another example in terms of what is possibly could explain his overall behavior.
So is that why you recommended that there be PET scans and
Injection,
MRI scan?
bleeding.
Yep, sustain is deleting.
Did you recommend any other tests or anything?
So I recommended neurodiagnostic evaluations, including MRI and PET scan, to further elucidate in his brain behavior impairment that was noted in my evaluation.
Okay. Did you review any DCF records?
There was records that DCF was called on at least one occasion, maybe more.
But it was more the other records that you utilized in your evaluation and your rendering your opinions here today.
So those records were just indicative of, again, a dysfunctional family, abuse that occurred, neglect, abandonment. These are all different backgrounds as to a person, an individual, unfortunately, 14 schools, lack of stability, lack of follow-through, lack of structure. You're opening yourself up for such vulnerabilities when that occurs. So that's what that was indicative of.
If I could just have a moment, please.
Yes.
Doctor, one last question. Do you know anything about Davion's hand dominance? Like, is he right or left-handed?
He's left-hand dominant.
Okay.
I tested for that as well.
Or pass the witness and I'm.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, jury, it's 4:30, and so we're gonna break a little bit earlier today. So we will continue at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Just remember my previous admonition, not to discuss this case with anyone, listen to any news or social media posts, no independent investigation. We're on track, so we're making good progress, okay? I promised you we'd be done by this Friday, May 15th, and we will. Okay? All right, see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
All rise. All yours are up there.
Okay, very good. So, Doctor, you are excused for this evening since you've not yet been cross-examined. You can't talk to anybody, including the attorneys that brought you here today, about anything related to this case. All right? And we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Okay, very good. Thank you.
I can hand these back to the doctor.
Yes, Mr. Hernandez.
Your Honor, I have two matters. I just wanted to remind the court, I know it'll be out of place, out of turn, but Connie did indicate that my witness, Charmaine Steger, at the Duval County Jail would be available at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
All right, so I tell you what, we'll just do that first, okay? We'll do Charmaine Steiger first and then resume with the cross-examination of this witness.
And one other question, Your Honor. I have to check this to me, but what time should I have my doctor here? Mid-morning?
Well, Ms. Toomey?
Yes, Judge.
Who do you have left after the doctor?
I have Dr. Rubino left, and then I have 2 inmates that are going to be coming, and then I have 1 lay witness, which will be really short.
I mean, I would say, 11:30-ish, somewhere around
11:30.
there.
And one other question, Your Honor. One of the inmates that Ms. Toomey is referring to is also related
Doctor,
to
you
my,
can take off, you're good.
is also related to my client. If the court and the state doesn't, if the state doesn't object, I was thinking I could do on cross, simply do my presentation regarding my client, Rashad Murphy, because it basically, the witness is related to both defendants and are listed by both defendants.
I don't care, other than the
Okay.
state objects to you leaving. Since it's your
sorry.
witness.
Doing it on cross,
Well,
you could just recall the witness out of.
Yeah, let's
I
just
can
do
recall
that.
the witness. I just didn't want him to have to be transported
No,
twice.
that's fine. So whenever that witness testifies, Ms. Toomey will do direct, and then Mr. Harmon or Ms. Doty will cross. And then next we'll just keep the witness on the stand, then you do your direct, and then same thing, okay?
And I did, sorry, I did request those inmates to be brought over for the afternoon, if that's okay. I think I have enough. Or should I have them in?
Well, I think you brought over in the morning. I mean,
I wasn't sure.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how long the cross is gonna last. You've got one more expert, but I don't know. I have
Okay.
brought over in the morning.
Okay.
And Judge, I do have a concern. I know that there's a child in the courtroom and that's fine, but there have been numerous times where we've been able to hear the baby making noise back there. And I would just ask that they remove them from the courtroom when that is gonna happen.
Yeah, so I've also heard the child making noises. It's really, do the children have to be here? I don't know. I can't really hear what you're saying, Ms. Lau. Yeah, I understand, and that's fine for today. I know you guys were witnesses, but I just think going forward tomorrow and going forward to the rest of the trial, I mean, normally I don't allow young children into the courtroom. So if I understand today was a necessity because you all were testifying and obviously you need to be here. But now that you've testified, I don't know that it's necessary for the young children to be here in the courtroom. So I would just ask you, please make other arrangements. Either you guys switch off, maybe one watches the kids while someone else sits in the courtroom or something to that effect, okay? Okay, very good. All right, see you guys tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Yeah, baby mama, she a fan, though. All my niggas, they strapped fandom. How you hate, you a fan, bro. Bust slow, the honeys, I'm in the Lambo. Yeah, baby.